Hello and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. OpenSide's newest product, Onto Air Forms, is the Airtable Forms solution that you've been looking for. Visit openside.com to see how it can take your Airtable workflow to the next level. For a limited time, get Onto Air Forms free when you purchase the Onto Air Actions Zapier connector. This episode, we welcome Vincent Tang from Orlando, Florida. Vincent is an e-commerce product manager and workflow specialist. He works for a company that builds and designs restaurants, and he has helped hundreds of restaurants grow from concept to successful franchise. Vincent built out his company's product database and purchase order system through Airtable. During his free time, he loves to explore new tools and writes popular blogs on them. He even writes his own software, some of which is used by hundreds of Airtable users. He speaks at technical developer conferences and has won multiple hackathons. During his demo, Vincent shows us two Airtable tools that he's created. One that allows non-Airtable users to collaborate on data from Airtable in Google Sheets, and another that allows you to download and rename images that you've stored in Airtable. He also gives us a tour of an Airtable CRM he built for a nonprofit that helps rehabilitate homeless back into society. Visit BuiltOnAir.com to sign up for the Built On Air mailing list, where you can get weekly updates on new podcast episodes and other fun Airtable things.
Yeah, so I made like a little slide deck presentation because that's what I normally do whenever I have to present something. I want to talk about three different things that in this demo presentation. The first two are going to be things that I've actually built, plugins or workflows that you can use with Airtable today that aren't terribly complicated to implement into your workflow to handle different tasks that you might have.
Cool.
And the last one is a community center demo. So I had to do some nonprofit consulting for it's essentially a homeless community center. So it's a center that helps homeless people get off the streets and back into everyday life, right?
Awesome.
So I have like a prototype that I can show you that has a bunch of fake data on it already.
Very cool.
So the first thing that a lot of users, such as myself and people on the forums ask is, how do you back up your images, right? I'm not sure if things have changed since then, if there is a natural way of backing up images through Airtable. But let's say you have a spreadsheet, right? And let's keep it super simple. You have the first column is table one, and the second column is tubular rods, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have two columns, right? You have the name and you have the attachment. The name is the name of the picture that you want to name that image to the right side, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
So let's say I want all these images on my local machine, right? And not just live on Airtable's image server, right? How would you go from point A to point B? You can
I know on the forums, there's this whole thing where you're like, everyone's like, well, I want to be able to download everything in my base, but what about the images,
Yeah, what about the images? So you can download the CSV off of this, right? And I'll do it right now for you to see what it looks like. This is the example table that I was showing you, right? You can click here, right here in this little 3-button widget, and you can actually download the CSV file, which I'll just download in desktop because it's easy to find, all right? But if you were to actually look at that Excel spreadsheet, which is right here, let me double click it. That's just where your image is located, right? That's not your actual image.
Right.
Like I want the image to physically live on my machine, right? So what I created was actually a macro. Let me just copy paste this for the time being and just push it away because I need to run a different spreadsheet. You see this spreadsheet right here, right?
I do indeed.
Airtable bulk downloader renamer. So I created this Excel Vba plugin, and you don't have to be an expert or anything to know how to run it. It's just Excel, right? You just download the file and then you paste in your contents, the things I just copied, into the first two columns like that, right?
Nice.
And all you have to do is you click this tab at the top called View, and then this tab called Macros, and then you click View Macros. And when you click that, it'll have like these three random things at the very top. You just click the first one, you just click Run, and it asks for a location. It just asks if you have the correct data format, which is the first column is the name of the picture you want to rename as, and the second column is your image attachment location, right? So you just click OK, and you just give it a folder name. Let's just call it. I just call it batch 1. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it whatever. Click OK, and it runs through this command prompt interface. So you have to run this on Windows. I don't have it currently set up for Mac. And you'll see that it actually deleted the first header column. It was supposed to. There was a header column here. It just deleted it because that's just how it works. And you still got the original images here, and you have a bunch of new fields that change, right? And you might be wondering, like, what is all of this stuff? And if you just go back to your desktop, you'll see something has changed, right? These 5 items are brand new. They weren't on my desktop originally, right? But after I ran that macro, we've got new things here. The first thing is if you go back to the original what's it called? The original table, you'll see that there are 3 unique images here, but there are 6 images total, right? So these 3 images are unique. And then these 3 images are duplicates. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Because you have 2 husky happies, and you already have a husky happy defined for that image set. And you already have a cute doggo up here, right? And then you have a cute doggo 1, and they're using the same image. So what it does is it downloads those original image assets, and then it creates a subfolder right here, and it's got your renamed files.
Beautiful.
So basically what it does is these 3 images are just for staging, and then this folder right here, this batch folder, that's actually what you want coming out. That makes sense.
For sure. What a great solution too, because it's not just you get it to download, but you can also customize the names of the images, right? Instead of just like, screenshot whatever, the actual name of the image that you uploaded.
So
it ends up being super just neat and really easy to organize and find.
So you could use this, let's say you're putting images to employees that work at your company. You can just download every image of every employee that works at your company. And you can import that whole folder over to whatever system you have at work. You might have like an ERP system, like an enterprise resource planning platform, whatever complicated Microsoft suite or Google suite you have. And this is just a nice, clean way of just seeing the images themselves on your computer. This only works for Windows though. So that's the first demo I wanted to show.
I love it. Please make one for Mac. I would love to use it.
I have a MacBook Pro for my laptop, but I just haven't gotten around to setting up a Mac version for it because
I understand we're in the minority for sure, but maybe someday. I love just how simple that is and just really, easy to run. Definitely solves a problem.
Yeah, so it's just a super simple way of handling things. Let me show you the next application, which is, let me just cover over like why you would use this plugin. So if you want a local copy of images, and if you're importing into another platform and you didn't want to use API and you just wanted something super simple, it's a spreadsheet, right? With the macro, and you just run and you're done, right?
I love it.
The next one is called Airtable to Google Spreadsheet. So let's say you have that same example database, right? And let's say you just wanted to throw it in Google Spreadsheets, right? And you might be asking, why would you want to do that? You have Airtable already. But there are a couple of reasons. The first one is if you're collaborating with someone that you don't normally collaborate with, you don't have to invite them to your Airtable database. You don't have to have them as like a subscribed user. And if you're not working with them long term, why would you need all that anyways, right? Whereas Google Spreadsheets, anyone can just edit the file and then it's done, right? Next issue is, I don't know why I put this over here, but that's just like a command that I used earlier. But the next issue is if you want to have like a nicer printout for your document, and I'll show you some examples actually in a moment.
Right. Yeah. Airtable printouts always look like so funky. They're just.
I actually have two printouts to show you. If I go back to my original, what's it called? Not through screen share, but through webcam.
So the webcam is still recording, but we can stop the screen share really quick, so we'll get a bigger view of your video.
Yeah. Let me go to. How do I go? Oh, it's over here on the side. So I'll pause it and I'll stop the share.
Perfect.
And you can see my screen, right? So.
And indeed.
So I have two different examples right here. This is, these are two purchase orders that I had to make for a company to vendors overseas in China. And you can kind of see this is what Airtable normally looks like when you're printing off a document, right? It's hard to set your image sizes. And then when you're setting your image sizes, you got a lot of like wasted space and it's super hard to format, right? And that gets really frustrating because you want as many images, as many data fields as possible, and as many rows on a single page. That way you don't waste too much paper. So if you throw this in Google Spreadsheets, it's just so much cleaner and it actually fills up more space. If you could see like on the margins on the side, it fills up the entire page.
Right. And you have a little bit more control over, adjusting the width of columns and stuff like that, where Airtable is basically just like, you want to print it? Okay, cool. Here's how it looks.
Yeah, and it looks terrible. So, I mean, there's nothing against Airtable in that regard, but Google Spreadsheets has been around for much longer. So obviously they've thought this through for a very long time of what a good printed spreadsheet looks like.
Right.
And since Airtable is still a newcomer, that feature isn't really out yet.
So let me go back to the original. Let me go back to screen share. How do I do that? Oh, right here. Is it this? This is always confusing. Oh, it's this one right here.
Oh, I know.
You can see that, right?
We can.
So we've got this simple 2-column table, right? And you want to import this into Google Spreadsheets. What you do is you just highlight every field, you copy it, and then you go over to a new spreadsheet, which let me just make a new spreadsheet, right? And you just paste it, right? And as you saw earlier, it's the same problem again. You have like these weird formatted column field values, and you want to format it in such a way that you can just throw it straight into Airtable, or sorry, straight into Google Spreadsheets with images that you can actually print out. So what you do is you copy the second column, which is all the unformatted image cells, and you go through this thing called browserling, which is like, it's essentially like a place where you can dump like a lot of text, and then you can run this thing called a regex statement, which basically cleans up your file. So you're dumping content on the page, and then you're extracting useful information back, essentially. Does that make sense?
Nice. Of course, absolutely.
So let me paste those contents that I just copied from the second column on my spreadsheet, and then I have that little thing that I had earlier. That's why I put it up there. It's this little code that you have to put in order for it to work properly. So you go back to that spreadsheet. I actually already pasted it here, but I'm just going to paste it again just to show you that, so you can see like what it looks like from the very beginning. You press extract batches, and you can see like all the data gets cleaned up, right?
Right. Yeah. You're just telling it, hey, I'm really only interested in this portion, because for some reason Airtable puts the image name and then the URL in parentheses, which
it's weird, right?
Right. Like, what are you're going to have to do something else with that data to get what you need.
No, definitely. So
if you actually copy this link and you just run it through your browser, it'll actually show up as an image. So this is exactly what Google needs, right? For changing that field into images. So you can just paste over whatever you originally had. And then you go to the third column, column C, and all you do is you write a formula. The formula is equal image, parentheses, and then you can see it's got like a few different parameters. All you have to do is just click that image, and then you just put a comma, and you put 1, and then you close it off. It's super simple. And then you hit enter. And then you can see there's that little smart doggo image, right? And then if you just pull it down like you do in Excel, you have all your images, right? So let's say you want these images to be bigger when you're printing it off on a spreadsheet. You can just left click on the first row and then hold shift and then left click on the 6th row. And then you hold control and then you see this little arrow thingy. I wish I could zoom this in, but I'm not on a Mac.
It's okay.
So you just hold left control and then you just hold left click and then you just drag it. And then you can see the images get bigger. And then you can print it off and then it'll look, the size of the images depends on the size of the column, or the cell height.
Right. And you have so much more control in Google Sheets, to determine that image size, to center them or left align or right align or, whatever you want. And, I really do kind of like how this is such a great use case for like those fringe things, right? That like they're kind of specific because normally like most people who use Airtable probably don't need to do a printout of their database. But if you need it, you really need it, right? And you need to be able to format it to look how you want.
Exactly. So
then also too for, editing and stuff like that, right? It is, especially if you're on, a paid Airtable plan, you're like, I really don't want to just add a person and, type some stuff in. They're not worth the, $24 or whatever. So
I guess you could have like a temporary user, and then you just rotate passwords for that user every time you have to give it off to somebody else.
But or it's you're like, hey, I really want this person to be able to edit this data, but only this specific, table or section of my records, right?
Exactly. You don't want to have to.
And also, I think you hit on like a really good point where, some people like. Airtable, in my opinion, is fairly easy to learn, but also if you are working with someone who isn't super tech savvy or whatever, there's, a little bit of a learning curve that has to happen maybe so they can feel comfortable in Airtable. Whereas, Google Sheets, like pretty much everyone knows how to use it. So sometimes,
everyone knows how to use Excel spreadsheets and Google spreadsheets, but Airtable has a little bit of a learning curve associated with it. But once you get over it, it's really simple.
Agreed.
All right, so that's pretty much the second demo, and then the third demo is an actual base. So let me go back to my slides, and this is a homeless community center CRM demo, like a customer relation management demo for managing volunteers.
Cool.
So this is something that I participated in with a bunch of other people. These are actually developers and people in the local community that want to help out these nonprofits, right? And this is just me in the corner right there talking to one of the developers. And then this is the actual person that runs that center, correct?
Cool.
And actually I built an Airtable prototype for them, and they actually presented it in front of like 100 people. And I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. I literally woke up at like 7 a.m. like, man, I didn't make a prototype for these guys yet, and the presentation's at 9, and I literally just like printed out every document that they sent me, which was like 100 documents that I had to sign an NDA for. I'm like, let me look at their workflow, and I literally bashed out this entire spreadsheet or base in 2 hours, believe it or not. So that's kind of like the nice thing about Airtable is it's a super fast way of prototyping and collaborating with another person. And
Absolutely.
building something that kind of they can see and understand, And maybe they might not stick with Airtable, but at least it's a starting point that kind of gets them off the ground. So kind of give you an idea of like what this center looks like. I actually went and visited it. And you can kind of see you have homeless people on the right side that are coming in to do a checkup to see, whether they're having any issues with what they're currently at, if they need any food, what their job search looks like, just different things that a person that's living on the streets that might not necessarily have like the best situation what they currently have. So this center kind of specializes in helping people getting off that livelihood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just giving them the support they need to, improve their life for sure.
Yeah, so let me show you what the actual table looks like. So it's this right here. I put fake data for everything. That way I'm not like incriminating anybody. And there's a lot of like data compliance issues with putting real data on here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Scrub data, please.
All of this stuff is fake. You can see that I've called some of these names with different celebrities, right? This is Nicolas Cage right here. And essentially how it works is you have six different tables, right? You have a client's table, a client's family table, one-on-one events. That was like that image I showed earlier when they actually come in and do a checkup.
Cool.
Any issues that they might have, volunteers in field. So let me just go through the first table. The first table kind of just shows some of the metadata associated with that person. And we use a unique value based off their last name, their first name, and then their middle name if they have one. And then we just generate that as like a formula field right here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can, yeah, it's a formula, which is, if you're using Airtable, you're going to be using formulas a lot. And usually you'll put it in the first column.
For sure, yeah.
Or maybe other columns as well. And that's what lets you have unique values. And then this is like their client ID. The client ID is something that's associated with their systems. So they have a lot of other integrations that they have to work with the government sector for getting grants and funding.
Mm-hmm.
And they assign every person with a client ID. It's almost like a social security number, but it's not like, it's more public, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Like you can put this on here, but you can't put a social security number on here, right?
Right.
You can put their birthday, the government ID doc they have, the email address, just any information that they might have on hand, right? And I have another part that links to a different table. So like I said earlier, these clients routinely visit the center, and then you want to document every visit that they take, right? So this is a link to the one-on-one events. And this is all generated by another formula, which goes by the dates, I believe. Let me go back. Let me go to the formula. Do this right here. It goes by the dates, and it goes by the name of the person, right? You can see it says person, blah, blah, and then the date, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how you create unique values for this. That way you don't have like two different things that conflict.
Right.
And then we usually just the client, or sorry, the center will specify what type of visit it is. If it's like a care day, which is essentially they need food, they need clothing, they need the bare essentials, right? And they're picking up things. Or if it's something more severe, if it's like they're having a domestic house issue, which is also a potential thing that might come up. And also there was another column here denoting who actually interviewed those two clients or that client. That way you can keep a track record of saying, okay, staff member A had a meeting with client B, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't put that on here. I forgot to put it on here, but it's supposed to be there. The next thing is issues. This doesn't necessarily relate directly to the one-on-one events. It actually relates more towards different fields that you might not necessarily see coming. So they might have forms that are rejected for whatever reason. Sometimes these clients have to be picked up from the center over to wherever they're staying. Sometimes they just don't have food. So it just really varies. It's not necessarily something that they actually come in and then say. They'll just tell you over the phone that they're having so-and-so problem.
Mm-hmm.
volunteers is for managing different volunteers. And volunteer management is always a difficult thing to handle because everyone has different schedules. It's more like running an actual restaurant in a sense that you have to have different criteria. Like, okay, so-and-so can meet with, has free time around this frame, right? So I just put generic schedule notes, and these are multi-text notes that you can put down, and you can say this person's going to school for so-and-so. This is the case manager. So a case manager is a person that manages several volunteers. So you might have one case manager that has 9 volunteers under them, right? And they're usually the most experienced on the field, so they'll actually know like where the homeless people are camping in that specific region. And then I have another thing called fields. So if you're bringing in a volunteer for the first time, they might not know the area. They don't know which areas are considered, poorly maintained, that have high crime rates, that have issues pertaining to that location. So you can add attachments and just add like a map and say, hey, this is the area that's designated for case manager C or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually just make notations here as well, right? Saying, okay, this is area 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just use an image annotator. And you can make notes related to it, which I didn't put notes here, but I put notes here though. So in some areas, you don't want to go past there at 6 p.m. because it's considered a liability, right? Mm-hmm. It just depends on the area. The last thing is client family. So you can specify if a client has different relationships with their family members. That way, in case you need to contact them for whatever reason, maybe they might need support, maybe they might need help, maybe it's an emergency contact that something happened to that client and then someone needs to be informed. So you can put that information on here too. So that kind of gives you like a whole overview of this basic customer relation management system that I built out. And this was all built in 2 hours. Like I literally just put fake data everywhere, and there's like a special site that you could just generate fake data.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I love it. Yeah. I think it's just something like this, where you can really use that linking power of Airtable, right? That might be kind of, new to a new concept to an organization, or just even the benefit of having, all of this information in one place, right? Like you might not link clients to a field necessarily, but if you're in here and, looking at people, it's really nice to just be able to look at places too, instead of having to like pull up some other, document or whatever.
Yeah. So it's definitely a nice way for the center to actually understand how everything is related to each other as well. Mm-hmm. And it's transparent in the sense that they can see what's happening behind the scenes. Like they know this column right here is linking to this column, right? And they can see like through those little background blue shaders in the background associated with that item that they're linked together. Mm-hmm. So it just makes it very easy for someone to just like grab onto Airtable and say, oh, this is how it should be done, or this is how I imagine it should be done. And then from there, it lets you have that communication point, right? Like a place that you can both collaborate together on. And that's Absolutely. What makes Airtable so powerful.
For sure. Yeah. And just the visual cues too, right? Here in the one-on-one events link column, you can tell, which people have had multiple visits. Maybe there's some in the system that, haven't had any, right? And you can make inferences just based on, just purely the visuals, right? That you see on screen.
Oh, you can even filter it out too. So you can even go here and then you can filter out which ones didn't show up, which I have to remember how this is done. But one-on-one links if it is empty. And there you go. You can look through all the different clients that have never checked in before. And that's when you have to call them up.
Right. Yeah. That's really easy to just give, this view link to someone and be like, hey, would you please check in with these people today? We haven't seen them in a while. Yeah, really cool. So did you, so they like sort of presented this, did the community center end up kind of adapting it into their workflow?
So this is just like the first prototype. I would love to tell you that they adapted this entire system to the center, the problems that they had, but they wanted to go with the traditional CRM that specifically targets nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
But this was like the starting point, and this was like the most important stage in order to get things rolling.
Right. And I think you made a good point earlier where you're like, hey, I made this in 2 hours, right? So, even if this isn't sort of the end product that ends up being used, it's a great way to kind of wrap your head around like almost the personality of the data you have and what you're interested in tracking. And then you can be like, hey, Airtable's awesome. Let's keep rolling. Or, if you are someone like the community center where you probably have a bunch of, different reporting requirements and stuff that, need to be done by specific software, you can be like, this is a great sort of like brainstorming and starting point, to continue to develop things.
Yeah, they had a lot of specific compliance issues that they had to meet with the local government, and that was one of the issues that kept getting brought up, and there really wasn't a workaround at that time. There might be today, I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, this is also this is a really nice prototype as well if you're not working with sensitive data. So
right, yeah,
kind of shows the power of Airtable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Vincent, for showing us all of a really nice selection of your kinds of Airtable projects and solutions.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. If people want to contact you or check out your work, where should they go visit? Is there a place they can get that Excel macro for downloading images?
Yeah, so I have a slide presentation that has, it's going to have all the links on there, so I'll just send it over to you.
Awesome. We'll include that in the show notes for everyone.
And then I also have a blog as well, which I generally try to keep everything on there, but sometimes I just forget. So this is my blog as well. And I don't have a specific link to those topics, but on the forum itself, you can actually just go through and you can actually go through and look at the posts that I've actually made related to the first two topics, which is the bulk downloader, and renamer tool. And there is an actual link to that spreadsheet right here. So that spreadsheet that I used to run the image renaming and the image downloading, it's found right here. Amazing. And I just linked it to Dropbox.
Perfect. We'll include that in the show notes so people can check out your awesome solutions use them to solve their own base problems. Go ahead.
And the second one is another link on the forum as well. So I guess you're going to include it inside of the blog post. So. Yeah,
for sure. We'll have that in the show notes so people can snatch that if they want. Well, thank you so much for it was great to learn about your industry, which honestly, I never even really thought of, sort of restaurant design and logistics being like a thing that people do. Of course it has to happen, but it was really interesting kind of getting a peek into that world, and seeing what the life of a tech guy at a restaurant design company is like.
Oh yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's not like your usual thing that you'll see every day.